Hello, welcome to Construction One-on-One with Ravi Bhatia. We are honored today to be speaking with Peter Lehrer, a man with great accomplishments, a visionary in the construction industry, and he's got a legacy of projects that spans, I'd say, over 4 decades. Peter, welcome.
It's a little bit more than 4 decades, but it's close.
I'm trying not to date you.
I know, I appreciate that.
I stop at 4 decades because once you start talking about 45 years and 50 years,
You sound old.
and then people tell me, didn't I meet you like 40 years ago? I'm like, please don't do that. So, Peter, thanks so much for sharing your journey with our viewers. And we have a lot of common friends in the industry over the years, and I think our paths have crossed on some projects, but not directly. Going back to some pretty historic projects in New York.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're around a long time. You meet a lot of people.
Yeah, and it looks like you're still pursuing great projects and landmark projects for our great city.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'm maybe just beginning.
I like that.
Ending.
There's something about this industry that has people like you that are always looking to do more, do something bigger. But I think it goes beyond what you do. You actually enjoy this a lot.
Yeah.
So tell us how you got into this amazing industry.
Yeah. So I've always loved what I do, and when you love what you're doing, it really is not work. So I think this goes back to when I was maybe 5 years old. My father was a small general contractor, and I used to tag along with him when he was visiting his construction projects. And I never wanted to do anything other than build. So I think this started at a very young age, and it became part of my DNA, and it's been there ever since.
Growing up in the construction industry, in a construction household, which a lot of people, a lot of leaders that I've met in the industry come from construction families. So you fell in love with the industry, and then you studied engineering, right?
Yes, I have a civil engineering degree from North Carolina State, and there's a story about that as well, because when I was my senior year in high school, and I met with my guidance counselor, and I said, I want to study engineering, and he kind of looked at me, looked at my records, and he said, I really don't recommend you do that. I don't think the grades are good enough. I think you should study liberal arts. And I said, I don't want to study liberal arts, I want to study engineering. And I ended up applying to 3 colleges, and I got into one, North Carolina State, and that's where I went. And I proved that what I was told wasn't true, and I did have the aptitude and the ability, and I ended up graduating with honors. So I was very, very proud of sort of overcoming that initial challenge.
I guess the lesson is you have to believe in yourself, and you went against the grain there.
Well, I've never thought conventionally, and I've always believed that if you put your mind to something and you want to do it, you can do it, and you just never give up. And never giving up has been sort of my motto for my entire career.
When you hear somebody say that, it's unless somebody's experienced that, we all have our obstacles and hurdles to climb in life, but you don't take no for an answer, do you?
I never take no for an answer. And I've anyone who's associated with me, and there've been hundreds, if not thousands of people, I've always said, never take no. I think that in general in our industry, it's very easy because it's a complicated industry to say, okay, we tried, but I've never believed in that. That perseverance goes a long way in getting stuff done.
This industry has a certain pragmatic nature to it, that it's a practical industry founded on principles, on scientific principles. But ultimately, even with all this technology that's out there, I think I've seen you say this, that it's really about people.
It's all about people. It's great. Technology has significantly improved. Earlier, I was showing you my slide rule, which was my technology in college. Most people probably don't even know what a slide rule is.
They don't. So can you tell us what is a slide rule?
So a slide rule is a method of doing complicated calculations, and because it isn't a computer, it gives you the best approximate answer, but not often an exact answer.
So not over precise, but analog.
Yes, good description.
Right. And in a world of digital thinking, where we're so accustomed to getting precision, sometimes over precision is it's misguided, right?
Yes, this business is all about people and whether or not they persevere and whether they're successful. Often just determines the whole outcome of a project. And while the building process and challenges of building are complicated, those challenges need to be solved by people, not by machines.
And in your journey, when you started out, so you come out of engineering school, did you go right into contracting and construction, or did you start on the design side?
No, I've always wanted to be on the contracting side, and when I graduated, I was very fortunate to land a position with a company called Morse Diesel, which was a major construction company. And when I think back, my starting salary was $100 a week, $5,200 a year, which I think is it's $250 an hour or something like that with a degree in engineering. But it was what I wanted to do. I started in the Pan Am building, which is now MetLife, and that's where I just fell in love with what I was doing. And actually, I was with Morse Diesel for 16 years and started as assistant superintendent. And when I left, I was the manager in charge of the New York office.
If I'm not mistaken, Morse Diesel pretty much invented the modern concept of construction management, right?
Yes. So Carl Morse did invent construction management. He worked for many developers who had decided that they did not want to have their own construction companies and their own construction teams, because there were times when they were not building, and having that staff was not particularly productive. So he became their builder, and he had a fierce loyalty to his clients, which is something I've inherited and believe in. But and was, by the way, always Mr. Morse, and I would say he was probably the toughest, nastiest individual I've ever met. But I learned a great deal from him and always admired what he did.
The impact of Morse Diesel on our industry cannot be overstated. I believe that Morse Diesel also worked on the Sears Tower. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And, over the years, when you think of the Morse Diesel tree, I would call it, there are so many people that I've worked for that came out of Morse Diesel, and people that I looked up to, people, that in various companies, that they all came out of Morse Diesel. A lot of them did. And that's where they learned construction management. But did they start out as a construction management as agent or at risk?
It was pretty much a construction manager as agent.
As agent, and then it morphed, and then in the 80s we saw the Seymour concept take hold, right?
Yeah, and Mr. Morse's philosophy was that he worked for people on a fixed fee, and that if the cost of the project went up, the fee didn't go up, and it was viewed as a professional service, and that philosophy and way of working has carried me through to the way I did business as Lehrer McGovern and the way I do business now as PML.
In this business, reputation is everything. And you started working on your reputation early on with some iconic projects, such as projects that were so challenging, like the Statue of Liberty. You want to walk us through what that was like?
Sure. So reputation and integrity are everything in this business, and without it, you really don't have too much. And when Gina and I started, we were in business only a couple of years, and we learned that the statue, lady, as we used to refer to her as, was going to be renovated, and we were immediately interested. And as it turned out, there were 50 other companies, that were also interested in terms of the prestige and honor to do that project. But we won it, and which was pretty remarkable considering the competition and people that we competed with. But there was just something about wanting to do that project, and that project, that everything we did in that project had never been done before. So basically, we had to invent the technology and the means and methods to tackle all the different things we had to tackle, from going to Paris and finding a team of French craftsmen who knew how to work on a large scale with copper, to figuring out how to get one of the problems with the statue was water infiltration, and it damaged the steelwork that connected the frame to the skin. But because they had this water infiltration problem, they thought they could fix it by putting a layer of tar on the inside. And when they saw it, they said, wow, this is pretty ugly. We're just going to paint it. They painted it green. So before we could even begin to analyze the work, we had to get the paint off, and we had to get the tar off. So we got the paint off by freezing it, which was kind of unique, and the paint froze and flaked off. And to get the tar off, we actually used bicarbonate of soda, and again, stuff that was.
There's no textbook for this.
There's no textbook. There's no roadmap. There was no spec. It was kind of figure it out.
That was an audacious project and very risky, right? From a reputation point of view, I mean, you bet the company on that project.
That's exactly right. If this project failed, we were done.
I remember bits and pieces of that project growing up. I think that my father, who worked for one of the subcontractors there in NAP Construction, and he spoke proudly about that project, and still talks about it, about how it was a once in a lifetime type of project.
Yeah. The people who worked on it, it's almost like it's a special club. They will always remember it, and it's always at the top of the list of people's favorite project, because of what it was and the meaning. Was just a tremendous amount of pride went into doing the work.
That's pretty incredible. We were on the same side, but on two different contracting silos there. We were on Foley Square together, and you were, of course, with Lehrer McGovern, and I was with Structure Tone on that project. And that was also a kind of a unique project because it was a public-private project, government project, but under a private umbrella, and a competitive process, right? What was that process, winning that project? And I know our common friend, John Eschmuller, he's spoken about that project, about how competitive it was, and winning that project was the source of pride. And then you wake up one day and now you've got to build this grand courthouse downtown.
Yeah. So our bar was always very high, and it didn't matter what it was or how big or complicated, or even if at the time we had the staff to do it. Our goal was to win the work and do it better than anyone else could. And I think that our win percentage was something like 75%. I mean, we literally hardly lost projects, and it was based upon, not only Gene and myself, but as we discussed with Morse Diesel, we were able to attract people of tremendous talent and commitment, and it was a unique place to work because we wanted it not to be like every other company. There wasn't politics, it was just all about work and doing something that other people couldn't do, and talent was recognized and rewarded when people stepped up and accomplished unusual things.
I mean, these were game-changing projects. There were also game-changing developments that you were part of. And as you said, there were a lot of talented people that went on to start their own companies. They went on to lead other companies. I believe you also worked on the Grand Central, the big Grand Central reconstruction, the rehabilitation, right?
Yes, we did. And that was also a great project. And I remember, walking on the scaffolding because we had to get to the ceiling, and we actually cleaned the ceiling with lemon juice, because the main problem was over the years, cigarette smoke. It had blackened what was originally a beautiful ceiling, but it was restored by lemon juice and getting back to the,
Now, who thought of lemon juice? I mean, where did that idea come from?
This was just
Something acidic, I guess.
Yeah, this was just sort of an everyday thing for us, is to figure out stuff that other people couldn't, and experiment and try to solve things.
And talk about innovation. So today, of course, our industry is evolving and we're innovating, and you've seen the industry evolve from a contractual perspective, from a technical perspective, from a people perspective. Recently, I saw one of your interviews where you said that the industry, and this is a very positive thing that the industry has done, is that it's a lot more diverse today, and there are women in construction that are leaders, and we need to do even a better job of attracting women to our great industry.
Yeah. So this is attracting women to our industry has been really almost a lifelong goal of mine. I felt in the 70s and 80s this was really a man's business, and women didn't have a place in it, and I just never believed in that. And I have been very proud of the women I hired, the promotions that we gave them, and the opportunities that they stepped up to. And I think from their standpoint, they recognize that they had to overcome things and work harder than men. And I, to this day, take a lot of pride in trying to identify women who I think have exceptional talent and place them and recommend them to be in important positions.
It's so important, and from that perspective, the industry has come such a long way. And today, the industry, when you look at the size of the industry in the U.S. and you look at New York alone represents such a large chunk of the national construction footprint that the opportunities abound today and for the future. What advice would you give to young people who want to go into construction, whether they're craftspeople, engineers, or project managers, or future leaders and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think that you have to love this business. You have to be prepared to work hard. I think that this is sort of generational, and I think it's probably been driven by a little bit of COVID and technology. One of the great things about the early days was people's ability to be there and to communicate and to be present. There's too many thoughts about communicating by email, and really that doesn't work. You can't build buildings by using email and text messages. You build buildings by interaction and personal participation in the process.
I would tend to agree. Of course, we come from a generation where it was, we were working before email, and so email comes in, for you mid-career, for me early in my career, but I worked for quite a few years without email, and one of the things that scares me about email is that it has no context.
Mm-hmm.
So if I send you an email that's terse, which is not a good idea, or something that could be misinterpreted, or if I send a joke, it may not translate. Whereas if I tell you something, off the cuff, and you can laugh about it. And I think that we have a generation of people coming up with, sending an email doesn't mean that the thing got done, right? And so what I really liked early in my career, before email, if you wanted to get something done, I would go and, estimating was on one floor and accounting was on a different floor, and you had to walk over and check on your estimate. You had to walk over and talk to the accountant, get the bill out. And those relationships that you build and trust, that's really what this industry is about. And sending an email that goes to the cloud and you, okay, I did my job. I think that's something we have to be careful about.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think that a lot of this business is about courage, and you have to be able to look someone in the eye and deal with the issue. And email is kind of a way of hiding and sending something which most likely would not make any difference. When I think of the early days of Lehrer McGovern, and this is kind of a story that probably hasn't been told very much, is how the company actually began. And, we both know in context of the large construction companies been around for 100 or plus years. The history is sort of very traditional, but our history began one day when Gene and I walked into Mr. Morse's office, and we told him we were going to leave, and he, with a lot of four-letter words, said, "You have 15 minutes to get out of here with your personal belongings." And Gene and I found ourselves on the sidewalk, and we purposely did not contact any clients or we just felt ethically that wasn't the right thing to do. So we each put $10,000 in the bank, and I think for Gene it was a stretch, and we created Lehrer McGovern, and we worked out of my kitchen, in which we put a phone in. My wife would answer the phone and say, "This is Lehrer McGovern, could I help you?" And then we sort of graduated to using the Princeton Club, which we weren't supposed to, for business meetings. And there was a phone booth at the Princeton Club. That I spent a lot of time in that phone booth, talking to people. So this is, I guess, all about, being an entrepreneur and having confidence in yourself that you could do something, and being very fortunate, extremely fortunate to have met Gene, two guys who were about as different as night and day, but somehow we complemented ourselves, and we built a great company.
You had different personalities?
Very different.
Who was more technical?
Gene was probably the best builder I've ever met. He knew every nuance about construction. He understood it. And I was very comfortable on the, he was, I guess, just outside, and I was just inside, and very comfortable with building an organization, managing that organization. And Gene was out delivering buildings faster, better than anyone else.
Were you scared?
Was I scared? Yeah, absolutely. I was scared. And I think I've often used the word fear of failing. I don't know. Gene and I never actually discussed this, but I was always afraid of failing. And I think that was a factor that really drove me. And obviously we didn't fail. But there was never complacency. It was always, always a new day and a new challenge, and concerns about what we did. And I perhaps the last point on this subject, having been in this business 4 decades or so, but actually so longer, I have never been sued by a client, nor have I ever sued a client. So I think being in a very litigious industry, this is a track record that I'm really
That is very impressive. That is something to be proud of. How did you get your first customer, or who was your first customer?
So when we basically knew we had to do something in order to make a living, there were several clients that Gene had worked with that wanted him to continue. And I remember probably our first project was for a company called Color Forms to make toys for the kids, and they needed a warehouse. And Mel Kaufman, who was a very famous New York developer, had no reservations about what we could do, didn't care that we were just starting. But he said, I'm going to give you 747 3rd Avenue, which was a 40-story building, but you can't take any of the clients until this building tops out. And that was a pretty tough restriction he put on us. But having been in business, sort of less than a year, to be given a 40-story building, we honored that commitment. So that was the first of many buildings that we built around New York, around the country.
That's really a wonderful journey. And now we know that you're working on some additional expansion and iconic infrastructure projects for our city. And what's keeping you going these days? What's exciting you?
Well, I think that what excites me is not only the projects but the clients. I very much relate on a personal basis to people that have put their trust in me and my company, and so relationships, count for a lot. At this point, our goal is not to be large, but to be very strategic and limit our number of clients, so that myself and my partner Scott Weisberg and I are personally involved in everything we do. We're not delegating down to others who might not do as good a job as we would. But very proud to be working with Port Authority on the new Midtown bus terminal, which is a critical project for our city, and as well as working on new Terminal 1 at JFK. So there's never been, and those are two obviously very large infrastructure projects. But I've always believed in diversification and enjoyed many different projects. And while these are gigantic projects, I've also enjoyed size of the projects has not been the most important criteria. It's usually been who the client is and the challenge and feeling.
You relish the challenge of a complex project.
Yeah, the more complex it is, fortunately or unfortunately, I think about what I do 7 days a week. There's no, can't relate to the concept that Friday afternoon I'm done and Monday morning I'm back again. My mind doesn't work that way, so I think about what I do and my projects. Basically, most of my waking hours.
Well, I mean, you're living your passion, your dream, and you're continuing to have a lot of fun in this industry. What's the future of construction look like to you? What would you like it to be?
Gee, that really is
kind of an open-ended question, but
yeah, it's a great. No,
I'd like to get your vision on that because we can learn.
Yeah, I think a lot goes back to clients and how they envision the project and their ability to and this is a role that we very frequently play on projects, is how do you put the right team of people together? How do you know which architect to pick, which construction management firm to pick? How do you assess leadership? Because always in the beginning of the project, it's always kind of a sense of euphoria that everything is going to work out well, but it often doesn't work out well. And I think that it's about being able to look at what's happening today, but what's happening or what will be happening in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, and to be kind of honest about strengths and weaknesses. Again, I think the future is always going to be about picking the right talent, and having people motivated, to succeed. And, when they don't succeed, dealing with those challenges as well.
That's a good message. The right teams, the right leadership. I'm going to ask one last question, which is, I think, an important question for our industry, both from an infrastructure standpoint as well as vertical construction. When you're advising clients, how do you formulate to the client what contract delivery method you will select, whether it's a CMGC or a bid build or a design build? What's the thinking there, and are there set criteria, or does it depend on the client?
I think it really depends on the client. There are clients that are comfortable with doing things on a cost plus basis. There are other clients to kind of reach out and want the concept of a guaranteed maximum price, which inherently has problems because it creates it often creates an adversarial relationship, particularly if financially projects are not going well. So and then the entire contractual and fee structure, and I work with a lot of very good construction attorneys, and very important that contracts be clear, they be fair, and that they be understood and agreed upon before firms are hired. I'm a big believer in the concept of lump sum fees, which are not driven by the more it costs, the more somebody makes. I think that in general, there's no one size that fits all, and it's an understanding of a client and what the client's tolerance is. But in general, GMPs are not a great way of delivering projects, but probably represents 80 or 90% of the way projects are delivered.
Yeah, well, I used to work for a great developer in the city, Madison Equities, and we had an inside joke. We used to, we built some interesting projects, and we used to call it the guaranteed minimum price.
Yes, GMP, guaranteed minimum.
It's a well-known joke, but Peter, thank you so much. I wish you continued success. Look forward to seeing you on those great projects you're working on, and just keep fighting and keep going.
Well, that's the plan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.